Scooby-Dooby-Dooby-Doo, we love you, Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. Scooby, getting ready for my Scooby snackies. Right, make sure it's all working correctly, and then we'll be able to crack on, come on. I don't believe I'm watching an ad on my own live stream. How did that happen? I don't understand that. That's weird. Okay, sound is coming through. That's good news. Excellent. I'll give people just a second just to get into the room, make sure that the live stream is not causing any problems. Cool. All right, that's good. All right, it's time to do some Scooby-Doo time. Let's make sure that's all working right. So, okay, like for anybody who doesn't know, when you've watched my live streams before, you know the story, right? I'll answer all the questions and respond to feedback near the end. If you've never watched my live stream, just check the description if you're re-watching this live stream later on, and it will have the start time in it, so you don't have to sort of wade through the first sound check and just making sure that all of my bits and pieces are working correctly, which they do seem to be doing so that's good news. So we will get on with it right about now. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, or Dungeons and Dragons groups. And one of the things about Dungeons and Dragons groups is they're all very, very different. But sometimes you wind up with a group which is a little bit odd. It's like they operate like the Mysteries Incorporated gang. Like your Dungeons and Dragons group is like Mysteries Incorporated Scooby-Doo Gang, as it happens. And there's a couple of reasons why this is the case. I've been in more than a few groups where it does actually feel like I'm either in the Benny Hill show or I'm playing a character from Scooby-Doo. And one of the reasons behind the Scooby-Doo the Scooby-Doo style of play is that a lot of people are just sort of getting to grips with playing Dungeons and Dragons, and the concept of getting a whole bunch of people together and playing a game at the table requires a bit of planning sometimes, and they're not necessarily that good at planning. In fact, they'll freeze up. People won't know what to do, other people will try to take the lead, and so plans aren't planned well. What's worse is if you get a group of people and not only is the plans not working particularly well because it's not well thought out, everybody is trying to do their own thing. Like everybody wants to take a different course of action, and nobody wants to agree on a single course of action which could potentially be successful provided they all do the same thing. And then you've got lots of different plans working at the same time, and of course what tends to happen is disaster strikes. Or one of the ones that I find most frustrating, and I know a few people would, and that is the coward in the group, or the cowards in the group. Group members who don't really help in terms of playing your game. Instead, they seem to be more concerned about retaining their character, and they act like cowards and literally run away from every potential threat that comes your way, to the detriment of the group. Now, we're talking about a lot of different things. When I talk about your group operating like Scooby-Doo, the gang, there's lots of different things that can be at play here. One of the ones that comes up more often than not is over-planning. There's always a complex solution offered to problems that can't really be achieved easily. And that might be, rather than looking at the simplest solution that has the greatest chance of success, or looking at a problem and picking a option that has the greatest chance of success, rather than taking a huge risk, they'll go for the really complex solution which has lots of moving parts and a high probability of failure because they have picked the most complicated solution to anything. Or you spend half your game session is spent setting up a trap to trap monsters that don't trap the monsters. They either don't work, the monsters circumvent the trap, or for some reason somebody didn't think of a particular part in the trap setting that was necessary for success, and therefore the Dungeon Master sort of supersedes any kind of plan you had put in place. Or you come up with a plan for your trap, but you don't have all of the elements necessary to build the trap, and you've just wasted a whole lot of time doing so. One of the ones that I find most frustrating, and most players would too, as a Dungeon Master, as a player, and that is when everybody is rolling low on their skill checks, their ability checks, their attack rolls, their saving throws, and nothing goes wrong. So there was nothing wrong with the plan itself, it was just the execution of the plan, because you were dependent on a 20-sided dice roll rolling in your favor, or at least rolling a 50% chance. You know, getting a 10 on a 20-sided dice should be like a 50% chance, right? And you just don't get that. Everybody just rolls really, really bad and nothing works out. Also, you can occasionally get members in the party who think they have all of the right answers, and they will dominate the party, and they will often lead the party either to success, but quite often to failure and chaos, and they don't see it. It's very, very hard to explain to somebody who believes that they are right. And one of the things I've always found with my own friends, and I know about myself, is it's very hard to explain to somebody who plays Dungeons and Dragons and who is very nerdy that they are wrong, because often nerds believe they are always right. So this is probably one of the most common things that can happen, is when somebody believes that they are right no matter what, and it winds up affecting the group in a bad way. And in this case, the Scooby-Doo Gang have been locked up in jail. Or players' characters are using stupid tactics. Now, the players themselves are quite capable of using good tactics, but they see that their character isn't that smart, and so they believe their character should perform poorly in terms of combat by adopting really bad tactics to the detriment of everybody else. And then, of course, as one of my friends will always say, John Shackle will always mention, there's always those players who just seem to come off as being stupid, idiotic, or moronic. Now, I'm not going to make any judgments about any of this, because that's not the purpose of this particular video stream. In fact, it's the absolute reverse. It's all about giving you options. One of the things that my sister has done on many occasions when playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I would say this is definitely a Scooby-Doo trait, and that is she will play a rogue. And this rogue is far more interested in looting the monsters, or even the downed characters at the table, than fighting anything at the table during the combat. So there might be monsters to fight, the group might be under threat, but looting the downed monsters, or going through the treasure pile, or even rummaging through the pockets of one of the actual player's characters who've been downed, either killed or just unconscious, you know, just to see what's in there. It's a terrible feature of gameplay. And rather than using their sneak attack and getting as much damage on the enemy. So those are elements that I always found really quite confusing, and I know a lot of people do. This is why I'm doing this topic. Another one that can crop up from time to time, and that is when literally every single person at the table just wants to argue and argue and argue, and you get absolutely nowhere whatsoever. Eventually the Dungeon Master gets so frustrated that they just make things happen. Bad things happen when you leave the Dungeon Master for too long and they get frustrated, so they just make things happen. Or the group bites off more than they can chew, and that results in either their characters getting killed, badly beaten up, or potentially eaten. Running in circles, nothing more than that is such a frustrating element to Dungeons and Dragons, but it's actually a natural part. All of these things that I've just been talking about are actually perfectly normal in any D&D group, particularly when they're starting out. It's not like it's a magic formula for solving any of this, okay? And that you can figure all of this out straight away. Teamwork is often a secret stranger that has to be learned over time. So what are some solutions to dealing with your group operating a little bit like the Scooby-Doo Gang? Well, I've got a couple of suggestions for you, and that is practice makes perfect. The more that you practice planning together, the better you will get at it. Okay, as long as the group members are staying pretty much the same, I've found that most groups do improve in terms of their planning, provided they practice doing it. That's one of the key elements to being successful at playing Dungeons and Dragons. Also, keeping it simple. Very, very important to try to keep things simple. Don't overthink things. If there is a solution to a problem, take the simple option rather than the complex option with lots of moving parts with a low chance of success because there's so many different things that can go wrong. Set a time limit. Setting a time limit for your group to actually come to a decision about how to do something, I think that has been very useful in the groups that I've played at. Now, you can take a vote. I know a lot of people think, well, no, Fred, what do you mean take a vote? I'm not talking about group consensus, because often that's a bad way of operating. The reason being is not everybody at the table is going to agree. But if about 50% of you, or slightly more than 50%, agree that the course of action you should take is this particular action, course A rather than course B, then go with that. So taking a vote. Committing to a course of action. Now, that's really down to every person at the table. It's really down to every person at the table who is playing the game. When you select a course of action, or the group selects a course of action, no matter what, even when things are starting to look bad and your character is under threat, continuing to pursue that plan to its final conclusion, even if it's going to mean that your character dies. Now, there's a good reason for doing that. One, that means the rest of the group know that they can count on you to cover their back even when things are going badly. And it also means that you're not being selfish about how you play the game. I have always found this one of the elements of Dungeons and Dragons that people probably find the most difficult to comprehend, because they believe that really if the group is not doing well, that they should definitely flee. And certainly the entire group fleeing is a good idea, but one individual or a couple of individuals fleeing from the group when you've tried to pursue a course of action that hasn't worked, unless you all decide to flee at the same time, it's actually not a good way to operate. Keep trying different plans till you find a plan that works. Now, when I say this, obviously, if a plan goes badly, you can't like sort of save the game and go back. But you will find that there are certain types of plans that work better than others. And the more you practice and the more you try different plans, you will find one that, as a general rule, will work most of the time. And that is part of the practice process. And let's not forget, when we're dealing with monsters and other creatures, we are always going to get surprised by something. But there are ways of dealing with that, and you are not the only member at the table. That means you should be using the help action. I think a lot of people forget about the help action. Why aren't you using the help action? That gives advantage to somebody. So if the rogue does not have advantage and needs advantage to get that sneak attack damage, and you can't do anything significant, often it's a really smart move to take the help action and give that rogue advantage so they can get their sneak attack damage in. It's not always going to be the right choice, but certainly it will improve your chances of hitting really hard targets. And lastly, let's not forget the good old buff. Buff those characters up before and during combat or during an encounter makes a huge difference, and I think that's often experienced Dungeons and Dragons players always know buffing is a good move. Less experienced players often don't realize that buffing is the way to go. And Bless is one of the most common buffing tools you should use in combat. There are other ones. That's not the only one. Aid and Buff are very good at keeping your characters together and surviving and being more successful. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Hopefully, if you found this helpful or interesting or useful in some way, you'll share and like the video. And if you didn't, then you'll let me know. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel and you found this useful in any way, please subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish a new video. I really appreciate everybody who showed up, particularly since I know it will probably be late wherever you are. It's late here in New Zealand. So I do appreciate that. You support me by watching my videos and my live streams, and I really find that helpful. I don't do Patreon, but I suspect that I'm getting the feeling that maybe I should someday. But I do have affiliate links down below. Somebody was asking about my Amazon influencer page, which sort of recommended products for Dungeons and Dragons and hobbies and stuff like that. It should be working, although Amazon might pull that if I don't get enough traffic moving through it. But I'm not really worried about that. The Amazon affiliate links will still work, and you can just buy whatever you like online, provided it's something you want to buy, that is. I get a small commission, you pay exactly the same price, and you don't even have to buy the thing that I have linked to, just go through the link. And that's pretty much everything. Now, stay in the chat. I will get to the chat and have a talk to you. If anybody who wants to have a discussion about anything, Scooby-Doo, I'm happy to talk about Scooby-Doo. I'm happy to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Otherwise, if you're not part of the live chat, then just put your comments down below and I will try to respond to as much of the positive and constructive comments as I possibly can. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Alright, I haven't run away. I am just changing it so you actually get to look at my face. Well, at the side of my face. Okay, it's not the side of my face. Yes, it is the side of my face. Alright, how's it going, Bounty Hunter? That must be difficult to deal with. Look, I think when I try to do these videos and I talk about this sort of stuff, I have been reluctant to talk about the types of topics that I just talked about just now. All I want to do is say it's really about using options and solutions and trying something that will work. I really want the channel to be more about whatever you try to do, try to look at a solution and try it out. And if it doesn't work, try something else. That's the most constructive and useful manner. You know, learning to operate and communicate and work as a team, that is something that takes time. You know, teams aren't just constructed successfully from scratch straight away. For a team to work, they need to be together and need to play together for a while. What's this? Crowd 92. Hopefully I got that. Is that Crod 92? You're welcome for the video. Hopefully there was something in there that you will find useful, and if you didn't, let me know. Bounty Hunter. I'm not a DM, but I found the video to be pretty good. Well, that's good. Look, it wasn't really supposed to be for Dungeon Masters. It is actually more designed for players. When I was constructing this and thinking about the issues, Dungeon Masters, some of the elements I talked about are certainly Dungeon Master issues, but actually most of the things I talked about are issues that other players might have with other players at their table. And I think that's one of the things we often forget, is that it's not always about I'm having trouble communicating and managing issues with my Dungeon Master, or my Dungeon Master is having issues with dealing with some of the behaviors and the expectations and what's going on with the players at the table. Sometimes I find it's actually player to player, and it's about trying to work together as a team. And you don't really see an awful lot of videos discussing that particular topic on YouTube, and I don't know why, but certainly we've discussed it today, and if there's any way of improving it, you let me know. Right, there don't seem to be any more questions, and if that's the case, I am going to tootle off and go and have some dinner, because I'm getting pretty hungry. Now, I'm not going to promise I'll do another live stream tomorrow, but what I probably will do is I might edit or shorten down one of the existing live streams so it's shorter for those of people who don't want to watch 20 minutes of ranting at the beginning as I set up and whatever time I spend ranting near the end. So I'm going to say goodbye, and you guys have a good night, good day, be well, and I will catch up with you later.